Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Primaries were held Tuesday in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Vermont, and Connecticut. In Wisconsin, the millionaire construction magnate Tim Michels won the Republican gubernatorial primary. He was endorsed by Donald Trump and defeated Rebecca Kleefisch, who had the backing of former Vice President Mike Pence. Michels will face Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers in November. If elected, Michels has vowed to abolish the bipartisan Wisconsin Elections Commission. Meanwhile, Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes easily won the Democratic Senate primary after several of his opponents dropped out. Barnes would become Wisconsin's first black U.S. senator if he defeats Republican incumbent Ron Johnson in November. Mandela Barnes spoke at a victory rally in Milwaukee Tuesday night.
And we will continue to fight for good-paying jobs that you can raise a family on. I'm here to tell you that together we will move forward to protect the rights of so many people, the fight that so many people have been involved in long before we got here, like the right to vote, and the right for you to make your own decisions about your own bodies.
In Minnesota, Congressmember Ilhan Omar has survived a primary challenge from former Minneapolis City Council member Don Samuels, who criticized Omar's calls to defund the police. In other news from Minnesota, Kim Crockett has won the Republican primary for Secretary of State, which oversees the elections. Crockett is an election denier who's called the 2020 election rigged. And in Vermont, Becca Balint won the Democratic primary for Vermont's sole congressional seat. Balint, who is the leader of Vermont's state Senate, defeated Vermont's Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray. Balint had been endorsed by Senator Bernie Sanders. If she wins in November, Balint will become the first woman and the first openly LGBTQ person to represent Vermont in Congress. Vermont Democrat Peter Welch, who currently serves in the House, easily won the Democratic Senate primary in his bid to replace retiring Senator Patrick Leahy. Welch will face Republican Gerald Malloy in November. An attorney for former President Donald Trump says FBI agents took about a dozen boxes of material from Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate Monday while executing a search warrant. Few new details have emerged about the raid as Republican lawmakers called on the FBI and Justice Department to publicly answer questions about the unprecedented raid. Trump is believed to be in possession of a list of what was taken from his property, but he has not made this public. According to multiple news organizations, the raid focused on recovering documents Trump illegally removed from the White House last year. On Tuesday, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said President Biden only learned about the raid from public reports.
The Justice Department conducts investigations independently, and we leave any law enforcement matters to them. It would not be appropriate for us to comment on any ongoing investigations.
This comes as Donald Trump is expected to be deposed today by lawyers from the office of New York Attorney General Letitia James as part of a probe into the Trump Organization's financial practices. Republican Congressmember Scott Perry says FBI agents seized his cell phone Tuesday morning while he was traveling with his family. Perry's the chair of the House Freedom Caucus, was a key backer of Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. He has so far refused to testify before the House January 6 committee investigating the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. In June, federal agents also seized the phone of attorney John Eastman, who had advised Trump on ways he could stay in office after losing the election. At least one person died after a series of large explosions Tuesday at a Russian military air base in Crimea. Russia claims the explosions were caused by an accidental detonation of ammunition. Ukrainian officials have not publicly commented on the explosions, but an unnamed Ukrainian military official told the New York Times pro-Ukrainian forces were behind the blast. In an address on Tuesday night, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky did not discuss what happened at the Russian air base, but he called for Crimea to be returned to Ukraine. Russia annexed Crimea in 2014. Secretary of State Tony Blinken's in Rwanda today after stops in the Democratic Republic of Congo and South Africa on a 5-day trip in sub-Saharan Africa. Blinken's trip comes just weeks after Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov visited Egypt, Uganda, Ethiopia, and the Republic of Congo. Some analysts say the two trips have echoes of the Cold War as Washington and Moscow attempt to increase their influence in Africa. While in South Africa, Blinken criticized Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Earlier this year, South Africa joined many other African nations in abstaining from a United Nations vote condemning the invasion. During a press conference with Blinken, South Africa's Foreign Minister, Naledi Pandor, said she would like to see an end to the war, but criticized how international law is not fairly enforced.
We believe that all principles that are germane to the United Nations Charter and international humanitarian law must be upheld for all countries, not just some. Just as much as the people of Ukraine deserve their territory and freedom, the people of Palestine deserve their territory and freedom.
Israeli forces killed 2 Palestinians Tuesday in the occupied West Bank, this according to the group Defense for Children. On Tuesday, Israeli forces shot dead 16-year-old Hussein Jamal Hussein Taha in Nablus. Then in the early evening, Israeli forces shot dead 16-year-old Momen Yassin Mohammed Jude Jaber north of Hebron. This comes just days after Israel killed 16 children during 3 days of attacks on the Gaza Strip. In other news from the region, an Israeli bus company has apologized after a bus driver ordered 50 Palestinian workers off a bus near Tel Aviv last week. The driver ordered the Palestinians off the bus after 3 Jewish passengers got on and refused to travel with the Palestinians. The bus company claims one of the Jewish passengers threatened the driver and claimed he was a transport ministry official. In New Mexico, police have arrested a 51-year-old man named Mohammed Sayed, charged with murdering 2 Muslim men in Albuquerque. He's also a suspect in the killing of 2 other Muslim men. The 4 deaths have stunned the Muslim community in New Mexico. Police are still trying to determine a motive. In a news release, the department said a, quote, interpersonal conflict may have led to the shootings. We'll have more on this story after headlines. In Nebraska, a mother and her teenage daughter have been charged with felonies after the mother helped her daughter obtain a medication abortion. Authorities built their case in part on private Facebook messages between the mother and daughter, which were obtained through a warrant. Investigators also obtained the teenager's medical records. Authorities say the teenager, who was 17 at the time, broke the law by getting an abortion after 20 weeks. The mother and daughter are also accused of burning and burying the fetus. The teenager is being charged as an adult at the request of prosecutors. In California, a group of Asian American residents have filed a class-action lawsuit against the sheriff and other officials in Siskiyou County in Northern California. The lawsuit accuses the officials of a, quote, sweeping campaign to harass and intimidate Hmong and other Asian Americans. According to the lawsuit, 28% of drivers pulled over by the county last year were Asian American, even though they make up just 2% of the county's adult population. The lawsuit also alleges Asian Americans were 25 times more likely to be searched during traffic stops than white drivers. In other news from California, the Los Angeles City Council has voted to ban encampments for unhoused people near schools and daycare. The vote came after a dramatic meeting where 2 protesters were arrested as they denounced the council's vote. A jury in California has convicted a former worker at Twitter of spying for Saudi Arabia by providing the kingdom private information about Saudi dissidents. Prosecutors accuse the man, Ahmad Abu Amel, of taking hundreds of thousands of dollars from a close aide to Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in exchange for information about certain Twitter account holders. One Saudi aid worker, Abdurrahman al-Sadan, who ran a satirical Twitter account, was later abducted by the secret Saudi police, tortured, and sentenced to 20 years in prison. President Biden has signed a $280 billion package to support the U.S. semiconductor industry.
I'm signing the law, the Chips and Science Act, a once-in-a-generation investment in America itself, a law that the American people can be proud of.
The CHIPS Act will provide more than $76 billion in subsidies to corporations that produce semiconductor chips in the United States. Vermont's independent Senator Bernie Sanders opposed the bill, saying it's a form of corporate welfare for a handful of wealthy, high-tech companies. And in news from Mississippi, a grand jury has declined to indict Carolyn Bryant Dunham for her role in the lynching of Emmett Till nearly 70 years ago. Till was a 14-year-old black teenager who was brutally abducted, tortured, and killed in Mississippi in 1955 after he allegedly whistled at Dunham, a white woman who worked as a store clerk. Her husband and his half-brother were tried for Till's murder and acquitted by an all-white jury. Earlier this year, a team searching for evidence in the Emmett Till case found an unserved warrant charging Dunham in his kidnapping. On Tuesday, Emmett Till's cousin and best friend, the Reverend Wheeler Parker, Jr., responded to the news by saying, quote, "The fact remains that the people who abducted, tortured, and murdered Emmett did so in plain sight, and our American justice system was and continues to be set up in such a way that they could not be brought to justice for their heinous crimes," he said. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Democracy Now! Co-host Juan Gonzalez in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.